Vielen Dank, Herr Präsident. Thank you very much. I believe we are discussing a very important agreement. And before coming to the details of this economic partnership agreement between the European Union and the Southern African Development Community states, allow me to share a story with you. The EPA SADC may sound extremely technical, but it provides real opportunities for our European partner countries. During the signing ceremony that took place in Kasane, the singer Sesame Samantha Murumo performed a poem that inspired everyone in the room. The poem spoke about the hope of the people in the South African region that the agreement will offer opportunities that are badly needed. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, I think this shows that our partners in Africa know about the potential of the EPA. They look forward to the day that the agreement enters into force, and it is high time for that to happen. Let us look back for a moment. Everything started very early, already at the end of the 1990s, when the ACP countries and the European Union came to a common understanding that our trade relations needed a fresh start. As most of you know, the Cotonou Agreement called for changes in long-standing, non-reciprocal trade preferences that had governed the economic and political relationship between the African, Caribbean and Pacific group of states on the one hand and the European Union on the other for the last 4 decades. It was only on July 15, 2014, after 10 years of negotiating, that the European Union and SADC, the SADC EPA group more precisely, comprising Botswana, Lesotho, Mozambique, Namibia, South Africa and Swaziland, finally concluded the agreement. The SADC EPA will foster a smooth and gradual integration of the African partner countries into the world economy. Through trade and investment, it contributes to sustainable development and poverty reduction. And let us remember one thing: Africa is the growth continent. African countries are climbing up the doing business rankings. New businesses are emerging, and African countries are becoming less dependent on commodities. Africa offers something energizing. The EPA will only be one instrument to tap into this energy, but they will prove pivotal in re-anchoring the trade bonds between Africa and the European Union. And let me be very clear about one thing. I do not understand the last-minute sudden opposition coming from some members in this House. Those who are now being lobbied intensely by the citrus fruit lobby should know what their opposition means to the people in the South African states, but also for those European businesses seeking much-needed potential for growth. And more so, they should also know that the arguments brought forward are actually unsubstantiated, and that their fears are not borne out by the facts. Imports of citrus fruits have previously not been liberalized during the European Union's harvesting season, and ladies and gentlemen, this will remain so under this SADC EPA. And let's remember one thing: the EU will benefit as we obtain better access to the Southern African Customs Union market for a number of products, but what's particularly important, many geographical indications from the EU will be protected in South Africa under this EPA. There are things that come to mind like Parma ham, Parmigiano Reggiano, Aceto Balsamico di Modena. So things from the very countries where now all of a sudden we have this surprising opposition to what is a really good agreement. And, ladies and gentlemen, the agreement does not only help to liberalize trade and foster development, but has a number of features which are beneficial for the countries concerned. First, the EPA contains a large number of safeguards, meaning that all EPA countries can activate these and raise import duties if imports from the EU threaten to disrupt their domestic industry. Moreover, should the EU apply a multilateral safeguard under WTO rules, the EU offers its EPA partners a renewable 5-year exemption from its application. Secondly, the rules of origin have been written in such a way that exports of textiles under preferential rates will become much easier. Moreover, the SADC EPA helps to diversify the economies of our partner countries. Thirdly, due to the asymmetric liberalization, the SADC EPA states do not have to fully reciprocate the market opening. Instead, they can protect sensitive products from liberalisation. To be more precise, it foresees the exclusion of sensitive products, long liberalisation periods, flexible rules of origin, and special safeguards and measures for agriculture, food security and infant industry protection. This EPA contains also some of the strongest language on rights and sustainable development available in EU agreements. In SADC, the first chapter is devoted to sustainable development, which underlines the importance of this aspect to the parties. Let me thank all of you for the remarks and ideas that we've exchanged during our discussions. We already, as the European Parliament, voted a resolution on the SADC EU interim EPA in March 2009, and our wish list really finds itself in almost all the points in the agreement that we now have. I strongly believe that this EPA has the potential to bring fundamental positive change and contribute to sustainable economic growth and deepened intra-regional trade integration. I hope for your support and thank all the shadows and the Commission for the excellent work. Now, as Chairman Lange is not here to speak on behalf of the committee, I am taking his role as the author of the oral question on this particular EPA. And this is something, and I'd like to thank my colleague Joachim Schuster for that, and his group, the S&D group, who has played a major role in bringing this up. The question is, how do we monitor the implementation of this agreement? How do we involve civil society more clearly? Article 4 of the agreement stipulates that the parties agree to continuously monitor the operation and the impact of this agreement. Also, the agreement sets out a review of the agreement to take place every 5 years. We, however, believe that it is crucial to put flesh on the bones of these provisions and that the practical tools for this monitoring need to be strengthened. We believe that the absence of a joint parliamentary committee and a joint consultative committee, which do exist in the CARIFORUM EPA but are not part of the SADC EPA text, may be felt here unless existing structures can be used. We think that pragmatic solutions are now key in order to maximize the positive impact of the agreement. Today, therefore, we, as the Intercommittee and as this Parliament, would like to know the following points from the Commission. 1. What specific measures will the Commission take to ensure that the EPA is implemented in a manner which upholds the sustainable development provisions of the SADC EPA? And will it consider setting up a structured civil society monitoring process, such as a domestic advisory groups and provisions for parliamentary oversight? 2. Could the Commission elaborate on how any civil society involvement would be financed? 3. How does the Commission intend to take on board civil society reports and recommendations to address cases of infringement of commitments under the EPA? And lastly, 4. What measures will the Commission undertake to ensure policy coherence for development in the implementation of the agreement? I thank you very much for your attention and I am looking forward to our debate here.